I'll do a clap then. Good morning. My name is Steve Mann, and I have a back injury, so I'm going to do this lecture either standing up or laying down because I have a problem with sitting due to the back injury. So I'm here at Ontario Place, and welcome everybody. I want to talk about technology as a vessel interfacing us and our environment. Now, I talk about the Sustainable Technology Society. There's three axes, if you will, three circles or spheres here. The first sphere or circle is planet Earth, the environment, the physical world of atoms, sustainability, earth, water, air. And then the virtual world of bits, technology, the cyber world, and then the social world of genes, if you will. Planet Earth is blue. We represent the blue circle, blue because of the water. And then the green circle represents technology like this cathode ray screen. Back in the day, cathode ray tubes were round so that they could be built under high vacuum using the technology of the day. And so this round CRT, this is from my childhood, I had it connected to a Pascal Fourier synthesizer, and you could do computations and display the results on here, for example. And computer screens, of course, are traditionally green. We tend to think of green money, green circuit boards, and green computer screens. So green is the color of technology. And the red circle represents humanity or society. And we're all of us are red in a sense. It doesn't matter what our race or origin. If you put your hand over a light bulb in a dark room, you look at your hand through a source of light. When you look at your skin coming through, when the light comes through the skin, it comes through as red. We tend to see red when we look at because of the hemoglobin in our blood. We tend to see the light coming through our skin is red. And we're familiar with round things, like the round circle is this round entity. It's round, like on a LinkedIn profile, you're going to have a round circle. We often have our face in a round circle on Facebook or LinkedIn. Social media depicts us as a round circle face. So we have these three circles or spheres: the physical, virtual, and social. And we have the intersection. The intersection of the physical and the virtual gives us physical computing. The intersection of humanity and the virtual gives us the metaverse or cyborgs. The cyborg being the combination of human and technology. And of course, we can have the intersection of the physical world and humanity without technology. I'm a fellow of the IEEE, and at the IEEE our slogan is Advancing Technology for Humanity. You can think of this as two of those three circles, humanity and technology. And that's HCI, the whole field of human-computer interaction. Conversely, at MIT we used to talk about two different circles, bits and atoms, the physical and the virtual. Mense manus is our slogan in Latin, means mind and hand. It's the center for bits and atoms. And so we've got bits and atoms, the physical and the virtual worlds. And so if we think of that, if we draw that out, the physical and the virtual come together, and so we have the physical world, alpha, and we have the virtual world, beta. And over here, we've got physical reality. I'll call it PR. And over here, we have virtual reality. I'll call it VR. And now, this kind of, in effect, this creates these four quadrants. And you can see within these four quadrants, we can see we could even put augmented reality over here. AR. augmented reality up here, let's say. And then now there's something missing. There's a quadrant that's missing. And for that quadrant, I'll call that diminished reality, DR. And examples of diminished reality are things like dark sunglasses, welding glasses, baseball hat like this keeps the light out of my eyes so that I can see where I'm going. And it diminishes or reduces our perception of reality. It cuts down reality. And so the extreme case would be total sensory deprivation, where you have zero physical stimulus and zero virtual stimulus. And so at the origin, I would put a float tank. So at the origin, we have this float tank, which shows us less reality, depicts a reduction in reality. A sensory deprivation flotation tank. And when you're in a float tank, you have zero stimulus from the real world and zero stimulus from the virtual world. No emails to read, and also dark and quiet. And so that is zero stimulus. Now, it doesn't mean your brain does nothing. Of course, your brain does massive hallucinations and everything when you're in the float tank. But it means that you've got zero input from the physical world and zero input from the virtual world. And then we've got physical reality over here. A good extreme case of physical reality is a cold water swim. When you go for an ice water swim, that's a good example of physical reality. Over here, I've got my VR float tank, something I invented in the 1980s and 1990s. I invented, designed, and built the world's first VR float tank. And what that does is it takes all of the physical stimulus to zero and gives you only virtual. So we've got these extremes going from an ice water swim with no technology over here, VR float tank over here, and a normal non-VR float tank here at the origin. And then, of course, you can have various combinations of these. Here is one of the early VR float tanks that I made, early 1990s. Charles Wyckoff and I, in 1991, at MIT, wrote a paper called Extended Reality, XR. And what XR tries to do is there's all these different realities. We say let X be in the set of all reality, and extended reality XR allows us to take any arbitrary point in this plane to interpolate between the various realities or extrapolate beyond them to anywhere in this two-dimensional plane, anywhere in the alpha-beta plane. And that's what Charles Wyckoff and I called extended reality, XR. And the idea of extended reality is to create more than 100% reality in some sense. More than 100% of reality. So extended reality gives you beyond 100%, gives you more than 100% of reality. It gives you this ability to have a heightened sense of awareness, say when I'm going for a swim with my extended reality eyeglass. It gives me a heightened sense of what's around me. I can see into my own heart and respiration. I can see my physiological quantities on the dashboard in front of me, and it allows me to push myself a little bit further in the ice water to know where my limit is, know my limit, and stay within it. It allows me to really push the boundaries a little bit. In cold water swimming, you swim in the lake and you're connected to reality. You're fully immersed in the natural world. You know, the natural world of pebbles and water. Now, there's really a third axis that I want to talk about. This is alpha, beta, and the third axis is gamma. The third letter of the Greek alphabet. And I'll pick a word that starts with the letter gamma that suggests something about humans. And I'm using the word genes, rather poetically perhaps, because these are all poetic words. Atoms is a poetic word really, because atom isn't the smallest thing. There's subatomic particles like quarks and pi mesons. But conceptually speaking, in a poetic narrative, atom stands for the physical world. And likewise, in a sort of poetic way, gene stands for the human social world. And so we've got atoms, bits, and genes, alpha, beta, and gamma, the three axes that define this three-dimensional space that we call XV, Extended Metaverse. There's a third axis. Let me introduce the third axis, which is the social axis coming out of the plane. So this is the third axis here. And so we now have For example, the metaverse is within this plane over here. The metaverse is in this. The metaverse is in this plane right here. The metaverse is this shared VR. So virtual reality in the social plane, in the social dimension. Coming out of the plane, coming out of the page, is this third axis. Call that gamma, which is the the social axis. And so this plane here is the metaverse, for example. But then we can go beyond the metaverse, what we call XV, what we call the extended metaverse. And so this is, we can go what we call XV, the extended metaverse. And so XV is in this three-dimensional space. It's way out here. It's arbitrary. The extended metaverse, XV, or physical metaverse, it brings physicality back into it. So that's over here in this three-dimensional space. That's what we call XV, the extendiverse, or the physical metaverse, or the sustainable metaverse. It brings physicality and sustainability and nature and earth and atoms back into this beta-gamma plane of the metaverse. And so, and in particular, immersivity is a particular kind of XV that treats technology as a vessel that connects us to our environment and to each other, which I want to talk about briefly. So, metaverse versus sustainable metaverse, or sustainable HCI. That's what I want to see. It's these two intersecting circles of the Venn diagram versus all three. Now, we're surrounded by these technologies. We're often surrounded by technology. Technology often envelops or surrounds us. And this technology wraps around us in many ways. And so the technology wraps around us and encapsulates us. And so if this is us, if this is the human, technology often forms like a box around us like this. And in this way, we become a prisoner. In some ways, this is like being a prisoner of technology because it cuts us off from nature. It disconnects us from our environment. And a technology that disconnects us from our environment can never really truly connect us. Because, you know, if we had multiple people here, if we had all these people inside of this box of technology, we're still prisoners. And so the idea really is instead with immersivity, and you know, technology is like a box. When I grew up, technology looked like this. You know, this is a computer, a box, and we were hunched over a keyboard, you know, twisting ourselves like a pretzel around the technology. And what I envisioned is instead, what I wanted to do is to twist the technology around me. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a keyboard you're hunched over or a handheld device. You know, if you've got a handheld device like this, this is when I was growing up in the 1960s. This is computers were boxes, and we used to sit at the key punch machines typing these punch cards for the computer, or hunched over a handheld device like this, maybe standing but kind of looking down at this device, you know, hunched over it. And so it doesn't matter if I've got this device like this calculator or whatever it is, I'm hunched over it, I'm kind of bending down over it. I'm still twisted like a pretzel around this technology. I've got a box, just like we had in the 60s, same thing, a box. And I'm hunched, leaning over, looking down at this box, ignoring all the people around me. It's just as bad, really. It's not helping me. It's a technology in disservice of humanity. It's keeping us prisoner by isolating us from our surroundings. When I was growing up in my childhood, I kind of envisioned this. This was what, on the left, is what technology looked like, computers, and on the right is what I thought computers should look like. And what I envisioned, something called WearTel, which is a wearable telephone. I built a telephone that I could wear. And I had a microphone like this hanging over my mouth, and I had a headset so I could walk around and talk on the phone. And I hooked it up to my computer, so it was kind of a computer and a telephone and a recording device, and all these things built into one. And so I had this this technology that helped me see and understand the world around me. It was a camera, a computer, a listening device, recording device, sensing device, measurement, computation, communication, all in one. And so rather than being hunched over a desktop, as you see on the left, rather than twisting ourselves like a pretzel around the computer, hunched over the keyboard, like on the left, I twisted the computer all around me. So I pulled the computer apart and wrapped it all around my body, and twisted the computer like a pretzel around my body so I could stand and walk and interact with the world. And so we took this vision. We've been taking this vision of XV, Extended Metaverse. You, Yuan, and myself and others took this vision within the IEEE and elsewhere. Tom Coughlin, Yu Yuan, myself, and others took this vision within the IEEE to various places. This is IEEE Metaverse Congress Davos with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, inventor of the World Wide Web, and many others. So we've been taking these ideas into the world. Now, I started this in my childhood many years ago in the 1960s and 70s, sort of inventing, designing, and building these computers that attach to the body. And this is perhaps the world's first photograph of radio waves that I took in 1974. So that's going back 50 years to my childhood. I used to invent, design, and build machines that could capture our world and record our world. And something in the 70s, there's something I called metavision, which is the predecessor of the metaverse. Metavision is the vision of vision, sensing sensors and sensing their capacity to sense. And these are examples of metavision, sensing sensors and sensing their capacity to sense. This is an example of the metavision of two microphones. This is the interference pattern of two microphones. So this is a photograph of the microphone's capacity to listen. So XR is a combination of a virtual environment with reality, where the virtual environment is responsive to a real or complex valued output from reality by way of a real-time computation. This is Charles Wyckoff and I in 1991, how we defined XR. Collaborative XR is what we're interested in. In many cases, we want to collaborate using XR, and this is collaborative or shared XR, which gives us XV. And Yu Yuan and I defined XV as a sort of shared XR. And that gives us that third dimension. So this, again, the XV in terms of the blocks world is that third dimension. And so we have here adding the third axis. So we have communal VR, communal immersive reality, and then together reality and VR. Now, I want to talk a little bit about environment versus environment, because immersivity is a very special kind of extendiverse. Immersivity is a special kind of XV in which we take immersivity is a very special kind of XV, and I'll give you a couple of analogies that highlight certain technologies that become part of us. Some technologies become part of us. A good example, the clothing analogy. A very fun, sort of a almost humorous joke was, "Very funny, Scotty, now beam up my clothes." And so that kind of, there's something, it's humorous, but there's something very deeply philosophical about that, and that is that we consider our clothes to be part of ourselves. If you beam me up, or if you transport me in science fiction through time or space, I would expect my clothes to come with me, but maybe not all these pebbles on the beach. I wouldn't expect that those rocks over there to come with me, or maybe this paddleboard may or may not come with me, but definitely I would see my clothes as being part of me. Another good example is in the marina, when there's a boat bumped into another boat. I saw two boats bump into each other, and the captain of one guy said, "You hit me." He didn't say your boat hit my boat. He just simply said, "You hit me." No more than if you're running down the hallway and somebody bumped into you, you wouldn't say your shirt hit my shirt. You would just say you hit me. So when the two cars collide, or when there's a collision or an elision, when there's a collision or elision between two boats or two cars or anything like that, we might say you hit me, meaning your car hit my car, but my car or my boat is part of me. And so the vessel is part of me. So I define this concept of environment as being that which isn't the environment. So a spacesuit's a good example. The environment is that which is around the spacesuit, and the environment is that which is inside the spacesuit. And the spacesuit's a really good example because it's sealed tightly. This paddleboard would be another good example too, which is not enclosed fully. You know, it's kind of got a fuzzy boundary around it because I'm kind of partly out of it over here, partly in. So it's not a crisp boundary like the spacesuit, but it still, loosely speaking, has an environment, that which is inside, and an environment, that which is around it or outside of it. More like the spacesuit, this ball over here has a very sharply defined boundary. You're inside the ball, that's the environment, and outside the ball is the environment. The ball is a good quintessential example because it's a unit sphere in meters. It's 1 meter radius, 2 meters diameter. So it's a perfect exact unit sphere. And so we have environment and environment. And the ball is here. That's me inside the ball. And I'm the environment, and the environment is that which is around on the outside of the ball. The blue sky, the blue yonder, the blue lake. And so I refer to this boundary between the environment and the environment as the environment, broadening the concept of vessel to include things like clothing, cars, bicycles. These are all examples of environments. And so the ball allows us to connect to the environment around us. It allows us to connect to nature, to get in touch with nature, the technology that allows us to connect to the natural world around us. And so we have, it's a perfect unit sphere in meters. So if you drew a set of axes right through the center, 0 is at the center, you've got 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3, and on the y-axis you've got 1, 2, -1, -2, and so on. So now we've got this sort of, set of grid lines, if you will, that define so this ball then becomes this space as an example of this environment. I'm going to argue that cyborgs existed for more than 1 million years. I've been often referred to in the media as the world's first cyborg. It's often been written that Steve Mann is the world's first cyborg. I've seen that appear quite a bit in the media. And I challenged that. I said, that's not really right. Cyborgs have been around for a long time. Manfred Klein's coined the term cyborg. And he said his favorite example is someone riding a bicycle, and bicycles have been around for 200 years. But even older are vessels, and there's evidence that hominids, our ancient ancestors, traveled aboard vessels more than 1 million years ago. That is to say, cyborgs are more than 1 million years old. Cyborgs have existed for more than 1 million years before the invention of clothing, before the invention of the wheel, even before Homo sapiens existed. Cyborgs have existed. So if we see cyborg as that primordial connection between a technology such as the vessel and the human, we can see that the vessel is this environment. And so these are just simply examples of it. The ball, as I said, is perhaps my favorite example because it's a perfect unit sphere. It defines an interior and an exterior. The interior is the environment and the exterior is the environment. Now, obviously, I'm part of your environment and you're part of my environment. And we too may be aboard this vessel. And in that case, we too two together have an environment, or there might be 3 or 4 of us on this vessel. When I bought this, it actually, the picture on the cover of the box showed 7 people on board. So it's obviously designed to carry at least 7 people. And we 7 of us are then part of the environment, and there's an environment around us. Not only that, but if we're both on this board here, my clothes surround me, and there's an environment of me, and you're part of my environment, but then the vessel is another environment around both of us. The vessel's another environment around both of us. So there's a nested fractal nature to environments. Now, Mersivity has 3 main tenets. One is environmentalism. Don't harm the earth or the universe. 2 is environmentalism. Don't harm others. And 3 is environmentalism. Environmentalism is unconcealedness, reciprocally transparent technology, free open source, and reciprocally immersive or submersive tech. That is to say, if it can immerse us, we should be able to immerse it. Technology that cuts us off from nature is a disservice to humanity. So if the technology is immersive, we should be able to immerse it. If it's immersive, it should be exmersive, i.e. it should be immersible, submersible. So now, Mersivity is this particular arrangement of human nature and technology such that the technology is a vessel or container around us. I've shown the technology here as the rectangular green box with the human inside in red, and this drop shape is the environment. And so Mersivity and HI, there's a relationship between Mersivity and humanistic intelligence. Humanistic intelligence is intelligence that arises by having the human being in the feedback loop of the computational process. It has these 6 properties which map directly to Mersivity. Mersivity regards technology as a vessel that interfaces us to our surroundings and to each other. And it has these 6 properties, which are outlined in that 1998 publication. Now, one important element is equivalence. Surveillance systems. Equivalence is this balance between surveillance and surveillance. If the technology is sensing us, we should be able to sense it. And as a counterexample, I made this art installation called the Digital Light Switch, in which I had a push button. Push once to turn it on, and push once to turn it off, rather than up is on, down is off. You push it once to turn it on, push it once to turn it off, with a random 3 to 5 second delay between when you push it and a 90% reliability, so there's a 10% packet loss. And what I found is it's very frustrating. This is a machine of malice, a machine deliberately designed to annoy and irritate. And as an art installation, it's calling attention to the problems with digital technology. Now, as I said, there's a fractal nature, self-similar nature to HI and Mersivity. That is to say that we too may come aboard this vessel, and then the 2 of us are a part of each other's environment, but we're also collectively, we define another environment, the vessel. And then we might have a number of us in a building. So for example, we 2 may enter a car, or 3 of us may enter a car, and then a number of cars may enter onto a ferry and board a ferry going across to the island. So then we've got nested environments. My clothes are my environment, your clothes are your environment. Together we're in a car that's another environment, and then together a bunch of cars are in this vessel, which is another environment. So environmentalism, or Mersivity, is of course multi-scale. And in fact, the human mind and body, we can go down into finer scales. The mind and body form this relationship. The body is a vessel of sorts, and the vessel, the mind, is within in this body, but the mind and the body are linked through efferent and afferent nerves, forming a feedback loop. So here's the fractal nature of Mersivity. Now I want to talk a little bit about the place I'm here. I'm here at Ontario Place. We swim here almost every day. And it's funny, when we started swimming here, the security guards came over and said, "Oh, you're not allowed to swim here. It's the cleanest place in all of Toronto to swim. The water's the best here. We have the best water here because we're out on this island. Crystal clear water." And yet the security guards said, "No swimming." So we kept swimming, and they called the police on us, and every day they'd call the police would come. cruiser would come in, and then they've sent in the marine unit, and they told us not to swim. We said, okay, whatever. And then when they're gone, we continued to swim. And then eventually the police stopped coming because they got tired of being called. And so they called the fire department. They sent 2 fireboats over, and a bunch of firemen came down. And we said, hey, guys, you want to join us for a swim? And they said, oh, we heard reports there was somebody in the water. So you see, they don't want us to swim because they want to privatize this island. They want to create the illusion that it's not being used so they can sell it to a private entity. So the government wants to lease this island to a private entity for a 95-year lease to a foreign corporation to make it into a private spa. And so there's some conflict of interest here, if you will, in terms of having it be used. Originally, it was designed as the cottage for people without cottages. So, I started thinking about the no swimming rule, and I said, well, it's okay to have boats. They can't tell yachts not to be in the lake, but they can tell people not to swim. And it kind of reminded me of a parallel. I went to a restaurant late at night, and it was closed. Only the drive-thru was open. And a bunch of us were there trying to get food, and we walk over to the drive-thru window, and they would not serve us because they said we only serve cars. We only serve people in cars. So I said, well, there's a dumpster across the road. I see I can round up some old wheels and some scraps of metal. How much metal and wheels do I have to strap onto myself to make myself cyborg enough that you'll serve me? And so it raised an interesting question. How cyborg do I have to be? You see, I've been discriminated against as a cyborg. I've been physically assaulted for being a cyborg. But now we're starting to see discrimination for not being a cyborg. Getting to the point now where you can't order food without the app, or you can't order food without a car, or you can't swim without a boat. So I said, well, what's the minimum amount of boat that I need to be allowed in the water? So I said, well, a paddleboard's a good example because you keep falling off it all the time. So it's a great example of a liminal vessel with a very loosely defined boundary, and you can be in and out of the water constantly in a paddleboard. So I said, okay, well, that's a perfect example of a liminal vessel. Now, how small, how much boat, what's the minimum amount of boat that I need to strap to myself to be allowed in the water? And we can see that as like the ship of Theseus, where you take the planks off of one ship and put it onto another, and when does it become the same boat versus not the same boat? We can make a similar philosophical argument as you start taking planks away from the ship, and when does it not become a ship anymore? At what point are we swimming? So I asked that question. I did a few simple experiments. I had my private yacht, and I put a pool on my yacht, and then I'm swimming in a no swimming zone. And that seemed to be okay because I'm on my own yacht. So then I started pumping water from the lake into my pool. And then it's lake water that I'm swimming in, even though it's not connected, but I'm still on my own yacht. Now, if I have a small hose that connects the lake to the pool, so it continuously pumps water into my pool from the lake, I'm still swimming in my own yacht in a no swimming zone. That's still okay. Now, as I take the limit, as the diameter of that hose increases, and the wall thickness approaches 0, I've merged that lake water with the lake. So in a sense, in the limit, I have a yacht with a hole in the bottom of it that allows me to swim in the lake, and I'm just surrounded by a yacht. And then in the limit, as that yacht gets smaller and smaller, I'm eventually in the lake with just a little floaty swim ring around me. And then how much swim ring do I need in order to be allowed to swim? So that's kind of that philosophical question of how much cyborg do I have to be in order to be treated like a cyborg. And this is an example. We're swimming in an area where swimming isn't allowed, and it sort of raised that whole question at MIT. You're not allowed to swim in the Charles River, and of course we swim in the Charles River. And how much boat do we need? Is this enough boat? That's my paddleboard that I'm pulling behind me. Now, it's okay to swim if you've got a paddleboard in tow because, there's nothing wrong with falling off a surfboard and or a paddleboard. And I've got a flexible rubber variable resistance cord there, and as I pull on it, it runs the thrusters on the vessel to pull it behind me so that it has 0 force requirement to pull, or very minimal force. And so that's a mechanism that allows me to pull cargo behind me as I swim over to the island. Another of my favorite activities is growler boarding. I swim over to these pieces of ice and climb up on top and paddle. And so there I am on the vessel. Now, am I swimming? No, I'm not really swimming, but I'm on what I call a precarious vessel. I love precarious vessels. I love these liminal vessels because these pieces of ice, they randomly break in half and leave you in the drink. Sometimes the ice will become unviable, it'll just start to sink and then it won't float anymore. Sometimes it'll bust up into 1,000 little pieces, other times it'll split in half. And then you can jump on one half for a few seconds before it splits in half again. And the thing is, are you swimming or boating? Well, it's a beautiful situation because I'm not really quite swimming and I'm not quite boating, but it's that liminal space between being a cyborg and not being a cyborg. And of course, I'm wearing my computer system and head-up display and tracker and all that, so I guess I'm a cyborg. But this is kind of the example. I'll talk briefly about some of the products that we made. So I'm co-founder of a company called Interaxon that makes a product called the Muse, available at Best Buy stores all across North America, Amazon.com. Muse is a wearable sleep lab, and we did a research paper using the Muse eye as a camera, where we read out from the eye itself using the Muse to read. This is our swim group, Swim OP, gathered at the beach here, Michael Hoff Island. This is the Vuzix Smart Swim extended reality glass. When we go on our swims, we often track. And at Stanford, fountain hopping is a big popular pastime, and we often like to run around in the fountains. This is a water robot I made to have a water fight with somebody in another country remotely. And the robot performs evasive maneuvers for physical fitness. This is water human computer interaction, water HCI. And these are all examples here of water HCI. So in conclusion, cyborgs predate Homo sapiens, and the very word cybernetic originates from the word helmsman, in fact. Cyborg means cybernetic organism, and the word cybernetic originates from helmsman, from rudder. Mersivity is a new discipline that treats technology as a vessel or environment that connects us to each other and our surroundings. Technology that connects us to each other without connecting us to our environment is technology of imprisonment. And I'm part of your environment and you're part of my environment. We share the environment, so let's protect it. Environmentalism, and aletheia are the three tenets of Mersivity. And if you're in the Toronto area, join us for a swim OP. Come and join us, swim with us here. We have this beautiful place to swim.
1, 2, 3.
I think it's such a beautiful spot to swim in here. Like, the water's crystal clear. It's very calm, it's very clean.
The group is just phenomenal in terms of like being, fun and engaging.
The waterline is where everyone is equal, regardless of what their status is in life.
Swim Op now, we have about 860 members in Swim OP. So we do swim ops almost every day. OP stands for Ontario Place. The thing about Ontario Place is it's out away from the mainland, so the water's a lot cleaner and clearer. There's no sand, there's no grit, there's no grime, no dirt, but it's a really sublime experience.
Oh, I don't know. The feeling of being in the cold water like that's very hard to describe.
I mean, the endorphins kick in.
It's freezing. I can't feel my hands, but your body feels like really warm.
So my anxiety had gotten really bad throughout the pandemic, and it was sort of getting unbearable, and I find that cold water therapy, being closer to nature, has really helped with that.
Funny thing is, this is actually downtown Toronto's only beach, and yet we're amazed at how crystal clear the water is, given that it's right downtown. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's out on this island, so it's right out into the lake.